My wealthy family didn't invite me for Christmas. When the waiter saw me crying, he invited me to spend it with his family. And there, something wonderful happened. Don't come, Kasia. Please, avoid this embarrassment for all of us. My mother's voice on the other end of the line was cold, calm, and sharp as ice. I was standing on the sidewalk, the freezing December wind hitting my face, gripping my phone so tightly that my fingers had turned white. On the minimized screen, the Instagram photo that had ruined my night was still open. The huge living room of my grandparents' mansion, the 3-meter Christmas tree decorated with crystals, the table set with linen cloths and imported porcelain plates, and everyone was there. My uncles, my cousins, my parents, all smiling, holding champagne glasses, except me. Embarrassment. I repeated, feeling a knot in my throat so large it was hard to breathe. Mom, it's Christmas. I'm your daughter. You're all together at Grandma's house and no one even told me. I had to find out through social media. Darling, don't be dramatic. She sighed as if I were a whining child interrupting her moment of leisure. You know how things are. Tonight's dinner is important. We have influential guests, your father's business partners, high-level people, and honestly, your current situation doesn't fit. My situation? You mean my job? Exactly, she said without hesitation. You chose this life, Kasia. Caregiver for the elderly. Honestly, what am I supposed to say when people ask what my daughter does? That she changes adult diapers for strangers for minimum wage. It's humiliating for us. Your cousin just passed a federal exam. Your sister is engaged to a businessman. And you, well, you're the blemish on the family resume. The tears I had been holding back finally fell, hot on my face. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the contempt. I loved my job. I gave dignity to people at the end of their lives. I held the hands of those who felt alone, but to my family, who lived in a world of status and appearances, that meant nothing. To them, I was a failure. So that's it. My voice trembled, breaking. I can't sit at the table with you because I'm not rich enough, because my job is honest but doesn't give you status. Don't put words in my mouth. We just think it's better if you don't come today. Tomorrow, if you want, stop by for the leftovers. I have to go. The guests are arriving. Merry Christmas, Kasia. The line went dead. I stayed there, standing in the middle of the busy street, surrounded by flashing Christmas lights and people rushing with shopping bags, excited to see their loved ones. I had never felt so alone. The noise of the city was distant, muted under the sharp pain in my chest. Stop by for the leftovers. That sentence echoed in my head. I was the daughter who got the scraps. I needed to get away. I needed to sit somewhere warm and stop trembling. My eyes were so blurry with tears I could barely see where I was going. I turned a corner and walked into the first open place I saw. It wasn't a fancy restaurant like the one my family was at. It was a simple neighborhood diner with plastic tables and the smell of freshly brewed coffee and beef on the griddle. It was almost empty. I sat at a table in the corner, wanting to disappear from the world. I buried my face in my hands, trying to muffle my sobs. Excuse me, Miss. I jumped. I wiped my face quickly, but my eyes must have been red and swollen. A waiter stood beside my table, a young man about my age, wearing a clean white apron and a badge that read Renato. He held a steaming cup of coffee and a glass of water. I didn't order anything, I stammered. I just needed to sit for a moment, if that's okay. Renato smiled gently and placed the cup and water in front of me. It's on the house, he said softly. No one should cry on Christmas Eve. The coffee is strong. It'll help warm your heart. I stared at him, surprised. A simple gesture from a complete stranger had undone me completely. My own mother was ashamed of me, but this young man, who didn't know me at all, offered me comfort. Thank you, I whispered, wrapping my trembling hands around the cup. He didn't walk away. He pulled out the chair in front of me and leaned on it, watching me with genuine concern. Do you want to talk? Sometimes talking to a stranger is easier. Business is slow. My shift is almost over. I stared into the coffee. My humiliation was choking me. I needed to let it out. Needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy or worthless. I saw a photo on Instagram. I began, tears falling again. My family, my parents, grandparents, uncles, they're having a beautiful Christmas dinner. A huge feast, expensive wines, gifts. And you missed the time, he asked gently. I shook my head. Bitterness burned in my mouth. I wasn't invited. Renato frowned. What do you mean? They forgot. No, they decided I'm not good enough to sit at the table with them. I told him everything. The phone call, the shame about my job, the cruel comment about the leftovers. I fell apart in that tiny restaurant, confessing my pain, I expected him to be shocked or to just say, "I'm sorry." But Renato looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time: respect. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You know," he began firmly, "my family doesn't have a mansion. We don't have crystal glasses or rich guests. But in my house, the table is only complete when everyone we love is sitting around it." He glanced at the clock and then back at me. "What are you going to do now? Go home alone?" "I don't know. Maybe buy a frozen pizza and watch TV until I fall asleep. I don't have anywhere to go." Renato untied his apron and folded it slowly. "No. You're not spending Christmas alone eating frozen pizza while I can do something about it." He held out his hand. "My shift just ended. My mother made roasted chicken that, not to brag, beats any fancy restaurant turkey, and we'd love to have someone else to share it with." I looked at his hand, a worker's hand, and at that moment, it felt like the only safe anchor in my storm. I took it. We left in his old, noisy, but well-kept car. As we drove away from the bright center, the scenery changed. The wealthy neighborhood gave way to narrow streets, houses close together, neighbors sitting outside chatting. There was life there. Renato parked in front of a small house with unfinished walls and a bright blue gate. "Here we are," he said, shyly. "It's not a mansion, Cassia, but it's mine. It's perfect." I said, and meant it. Inside, the smell of home-cooked food hit me. The living room was tiny, with a crocheted blanket on the sofa and a plastic Christmas tree glowing on the shelf. A gray-haired woman in a floral apron came from the kitchen, wiping her hands. Renato's mother, Donna Lucia, her eyes lit up instantly. "Mom, this is Cassia," he said. She had trouble with her family and was going to spend Christmas alone. I told her there's always room for one more. Donna Lucia didn't even let him finish. She hugged me tight, smelling of rosemary and lavender. "Of course there's room," she said. "Come in, my girl. This house is simple, but the heart is big. You must be hungry." At the table, she served roasted chicken with potatoes, farafa, and fluffy white rice. No imported porcelain, no silver. But the moment I tasted it, I broke down. It tasted like childhood, like love. I wasn't eating leftovers. I was being treated like an honored guest. Later, she placed her warm hand on mine. "Is everything okay, dear?" "It's the best food I've ever had," I said through tears. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." Renato smiled, pouring us soda. The conversation flowed naturally. They didn't care about money or status, only about who I was. When I said I worked as a caregiver, waiting for their judgment, Donna Lucia beamed. "That's a beautiful profession, my daughter. God gives such a gift to those who care for the elderly. This was divine providence, you coming here tonight." "Why?" I asked. "Renato's grandfather, Mr. Benedito. He's bedridden and couldn't join us for dinner. He was sad today." My professional instinct kicked in. "I can see him," I said. "Maybe I can make him more comfortable." Renato led me to a simple room. On the bed lay a frail, elderly man with bright, intelligent eyes. I adjusted his pillows, lifted him gently, and offered water with a straw. "Better now, Mr. Benedito?" I asked. He sighed in relief and held my hand. "An angel's hands," he whispered. "Thank you, my child." On his bedside table, I noticed a pile of old notebooks and worn pens. "You like to write?" I asked. A deep sadness crossed his eyes. "Oh, my dear, that is my greatest dream and my greatest frustration." "What do you mean?" Donna Lucia walked into the room and sat on the edge of the bed, gently caressing her father's feet. "Dad has an elephant's memory, Cassia." He saw this entire neighborhood rise from nothing. He saw the city grow. He knows stories that no one else knows. His dream was always to write a book, to leave his memories recorded for his grandchildren, for the community. He says, "The history of our people is being lost." But Sue Benedito raised his trembling hands, deformed by age and a lifetime of hard work. "These hands don't obey me anymore," he said, voice cracking. "I try to write, but the pen slips. The letters come out crooked. I have the book all here in my head." He tapped his forehead. "But I can't put it on paper. I'm afraid of dying and taking all of this with me." The silence became heavy in the room. I looked at that man, a living archive of stories, trapped in a body that wouldn't let him share his wisdom. I looked at Renato and Donna Lucia, who clearly loved him deeply, but had no time or technical skill to help him with something so big, since they both worked all day. Then I looked at my own hands my mother said were only good for cleaning old people, hands that embarrassed my rich family. But in that simple room, I realized they could do so much more. An idea lit up inside me, warm and bright, like the Christmas lights in the living room. "Sue Benedito," I said, feeling a determination I hadn't felt in years. You speak, and I'll write. He looked at me, confused. How? I'll come here. I get off work at 5. I can come straight here. You tell me your stories slowly, your way, and I'll transcribe everything. I'll organize it, type it on the computer. We're going to make this book happen. His eyes filled with tears. Renato stepped forward, surprised. Cassia, you do that? It's a lot of work. You barely know us. You all gave me a Christmas when my own family turned their backs on me. I replied, emotionally. You gave me dignity. This is the least I can do. And honestly, I'd love to hear those stories. A smile grew on Sir Benedito's wrinkled face, a smile made of pure hope. And for the first time that day, I completely forgot the mansion, the luxury, and the rejection. I had found a purpose. The following weeks passed quickly. Every day after my shift caring for elderly patients, I drove to the little blue-walled house. Donna Lucia always waited for me with fresh coffee and a slice of cake. Renato, when he returned from the restaurant, sat with us to listen. What began as a favor quickly turned into something much bigger. Because the stories Sue Benedito carried weren't just memories of any old man, they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed. And one of those pieces would soon change my life and my family's forever. January and February flew by. My routine was transformed. I'd leave work, stop by the bakery for a sweet roll, then head straight to the blue-walled house. That tiny living room had become my refuge, my real home. Meanwhile, my biological family kept posting photos of European vacations and expensive dinners. Of course, I was always excluded, but I was traveling through time in the memories of Sue Benedito. We had already transcribed more than 10 notebooks. The stories were fascinating street festivals from decades ago, the growth of the neighborhood, legendary local figures. I typed everything on my old laptop. Renato helped revise the text, and Donna Lucia made coffee. We were a team, but I didn't know the most important story was still coming. It happened on a rainy Tuesday in March. Sue Benedito was more serious than usual. He asked me to get an old shoebox from the back of the wardrobe. Today we'll talk about the saddest chapter of my life. Philha, he said, voice trembling. The chapter I called The Great Illusion. I opened the box. Inside was a single yellowed document, nearly falling apart, protected in a plastic sleeve. People think I've always been poor, he began, but 70 years ago, all of this, everything you see, was farmland, and the land belonged to my family. We had cattle, cornfields, a clean stream. It was the Boa Esperança farm. I froze. That Nami Boa Esperança. I had heard it before, but in a very different context. What happened to the farm? So Benedito. A man appeared, he said, eyes hardening, as if staring into the past. A young, ambitious man, spoke well, always wore a sharp suit, and smiled like a friend. He came saying the city was going to grow, that we needed to modernize. He proposed a partnership, said he would divide the land, build houses, and I'd keep half of everything. I was young, Kezia. I couldn't read well back then. I trusted his word of honor. A cold wave spread through my stomach, and then he brought that paper. He pointed to the document. He said it was the contract for our partnership, told me to sign it. I signed it happy, thinking I was securing my children's future. But it wasn't a partnership contract, it was a sale. And for a ridiculous price. He bought everything for the price of 2 dairy cows. When I realized the scam, he already had lawyers, judges, the police, and I only had my head. I was kicked off my own land. My hands shook as I slid the paper out of the plastic. My eyes scanned the page until I reached the signatures. There it was, Benedito da Silva, childish and shaky, and below it, a firm, elegant signature written with an expensive fountain pen. The buyer's name. The air vanished from my lungs. The room spun. I knew that signature. I had seen it every year on the generic Christmas cards my family mailed. I had seen it on the walls of the family company. It was my grandfather's name, the wealthy neighborhood where my parents lived, the mansion, the Christmas feast I had been excluded from. All of it had been built on land stolen from this man. Their champagne, their imported cars, their designer closets, all came from the scam. They pulled on a humble, illiterate man. Nausea hit me like a punch. My family hadn't rejected me because I was ashamed. They were the shame. Renato touched my shoulder. Cassia, you are pale. Are you okay? I looked at him. I looked at Su Benedito. I looked at that simple house, with peeling plaster, where lived the kindest, most generous people I had ever met. People who lost everything so my family could have everything, and who still welcomed me with open arms. Guilt crushed me like a stone. I was the granddaughter of the man who destroyed their lives. I need a glass of water, I lied, rushing out. In the kitchen, I leaned over the sink, trying not to throw up. I wanted to confess everything right there. I wanted to scream. It was my grandfather. I'm so sorry. But fear paralyzed me. If I told them now, they might hate me. They might think I had come as a spy. They might kick me out, and I couldn't bear losing the only real family I had ever had. I breathed deeply, wiped angry tears, and made a decision. I couldn't change the past, but I could change what came next. I returned to the room with cold, unbreakable resolve. Su Benedito, I said, gripping his hand firmly. We're going to publish this book, and not just a little family book. We're going to tell everything: names, dates, details. The world needs to know the truth about the Boa Esperança farm. But that costs money, he sighed. I had a savings account, 5 years of hard work as a caregiver, money I was saving for a down payment on a small apartment. It was everything I had. But what good was an apartment if I couldn't sleep at night, knowing the truth? Don't worry about the money, I said with a smile. I didn't feel. Consider it an investment. For the next 2 months, I worked like crazy. I hired a professional proofreader, paid a designer to make a beautiful cover with an old photo of Su Benedito on the farm, printed 1,000 copies. I didn't tell them I spent all my money. I said I had gotten a cultural sponsorship. The book's title was direct: Stolen Roots, the true history of the founding of the Jardangs district. On launch day, we rented the community center, spread the word around the neighborhood, put up poster boards, and, most importantly, sent free copies to 3 local journalists who loved exposing scandals. My rich family had no idea. They lived in their perfect bubble, believing the past was dead and buried. They had no clue that the embarrassing granddaughter, the low-status caregiver, was about to topple their empire. The community center was packed. Su Benedito, in a wheelchair, wore his best suit. His eyes sparkled with pride. When he took the microphone, no one remained dry-eyed. But the turning point came at the end. A woman with glasses and a recorder approached us. I recognized her. She wrote for the most read newspaper in the city. Excuse me, she said, holding the book. I read the chapter about the land sale, the documents you attached. This is explosive. Do you understand that you're accusing one of the most powerful families in the city of real estate fraud? I looked at Renato, holding my hand, unaware of my blood connection to the villains in the book. Then I faced the reporter and smiled with an odd sense of peace. It's not an accusation. It's the memory of a man who waited 70 years to be heard. You're free to investigate everything. If the documents are truthful, you'll see for yourself. She smiled, the smile of someone who had just found the story of the year. You can count on it. And if this is true, tomorrow this entire city will wake up upside down. That night, I slept at Renato's house. Before closing my eyes, I blocked my mother's and father's numbers on my phone. I no longer belonged to them. I knew that as soon as the sun rose, the storm would begin, and this time, I would not be the victim. The bomb exploded on a Sunday morning. I was in Donna Lucia's kitchen making coffee, when Renato came running in with the local newspaper in his hands. The front page headline, printed in enormous black letters, read, Empire of Sand, newly uncovered documents, reveal a millionaire fraud in the foundation of the city's wealthiest neighborhood. The article was devastating. The journalist had done her homework. She not only used Su Benedito's memories as a base, but she also went digging through old notary archives, interviewed forgotten witnesses, and cross-checked dates. The conclusion was undeniable. My family's fortune, the same fortune they used to humiliate anyone with less, had come from a theft. The great businessman my grandfather claimed to be was, in truth, the man who had tricked a humble farmer who couldn't read. My phone, which had been silent on the counter, began to vibrate. It was the number from the mansion. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again. Then the messages came. The first was from my mother, Cassia. Did you see this? Do you have any idea what you've done? Answer me now. Then my father. We're losing investors. The press is at our door. You need to deny what that old man said, or we're going to lose everything. even my cousins, who never spoke to me. Traitor, how could you do this to your own blood? I read every message with a calm that surprised even me. I felt no anger, no urge to laugh. I only felt pity. They didn't care about morality or the fact that their comfort came from stolen land. They cared about reputation, about the parties they would stop being invited to, about the money that would stop flowing. Renato called, concerned as he watched me stare at the phone. Who is it? I looked at him, then at Donna Lucia. I decided there would be no more secrets. The truth had to be whole. It's my family, Renato. I took a deep breath, the weight lifting off my shoulders. The man who tricked your grandfather, the man in the article was my grandfather. Those rich people who rejected me at Christmas are the same ones who stole your future. The room fell into complete silence. Donna Lucia covered her mouth with her hand. Renato's eyes widened, trying to process it. You're his granddaughter, he whispered. I am, but I am not them. Renato, I swear, I only discovered the truth while reading Su Benedito's notebooks, and when I knew I had to choose between blood and justice, I chose justice. I chose you. Renato looked at me for a long moment. I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, then understanding, and finally, love. He stepped forward and hugged me tightly. You're the bravest woman I've ever met, he whispered. Blood doesn't define who we are. Our actions do. And you, Cassia, are part of our family now. The book's impact was tremendous. Sales exploded. Major publishers wanted to republish it nationwide, but the most important moment came a week later. Su Benedito called me into his room. He was very weak, his breath short, but he held a copy of the book against his chest like a treasure. Thank you, my granddaughter, he said with a serene smile that lit up his tired face. Now I can rest. Everyone knows the truth. No one will ever call my family lazy or liars again. My story is safe. You saved my story too. Su Benedito, I replied, holding his hand and kissing his forehead. You taught me what real honor is. He passed away that night, sleeping with a peaceful expression. The funeral was simple but dignified, paid with the first royalties from the book. So many people attended that the chapel couldn't hold them all. Neighbors, friends, people who had read the story and seen themselves in it. No luxury, but total respect. Meanwhile, my old family's world fell apart. The scandals scared away the influential friends they worshipped. Nobody wanted to be seen with people accused of fraud. They lost contracts, they lost status, and slowly, the money disappeared. They tried to contact me many times, begging me to intervene, to donate part of my royalties to save the family. But I never answered. Silence was my response. They had had a chance to treat me with love. They chose contempt. Now they were reaping what they had planted. 1 year later, on the next Christmas, the scene was completely different. The blue-walled house had been renovated, the plaster was fixed, the roof repaired, and the living room was painted a cheerful yellow. In the kitchen, Donna Lucia prepared the Christmas dinner, humming without worrying about overdue bills. The royalties guaranteed her a peaceful old age. In the backyard, under a mango tree decorated with white lights, Renato and I said I do. It wasn't a magazine wedding. My dress was simple, bought in a neighborhood store, but I felt like a princess. Renato looked handsome in a linen shirt. There were no influential guests, no business partners, only friends from the restaurant, neighbors, nurses I worked with, real people. As I looked at Renato at our improvised altar, I remembered that waiter who offered me help when I was just a stranger crying in a cafe. I remembered how life turns. My rich family thought being a caregiver was shameful, but it was caring for Su Benedito, caring for his memories, caring for the truth that led me to my true place in the world. During the party, I looked up at the starry sky and imagined Su Benedito smiling from above. I didn't have my grandfather's millionaire inheritance or the fancy surname that opened doors, but I had something money could never buy. I had love, I had a clean conscience, and I had a family that loved me exactly as I was. I hugged Renato and began to dance on the simple cement floor of the backyard, surrounded by sincere laughter and warm applause. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But to me, it tasted like freedom. And that was, without a doubt, the best Christmas of my life.